We are Society 2045, a group of people aligned on a vision, a future based on relationships and communities, not on institutions and procedures. I'm Kim Wright, and I'm here with our Friday Talks, which are eclectic conversations to inspire and encourage unique perspectives towards the society of the future. We bring different perspectives of thought leaders to broaden horizons, challenge assumptions, and delight each other with new and provocative ideas. Today we have Alicia Castillo Holly. She's an expert in creating wealth, and that should get a lot of attention. She was born to a socialist family in a small town in Venezuela, and she's had an amazing journey to become one of the most interesting investors in Silicon Valley. Her wealthing method is used internationally by individuals who want to create wealth and synergy with a sense of purpose and meaning. She leads the Wealthing VC Club, a boutique investment club which allows individuals to co-invest as angels with VC funds. So welcome, Alicia, and what else would you like to say about yourself?
Oh, I'd like to say that I'm delighted to be here. This is a great group, and I'm all for innovations and breaking paradigms and learning and growing. So thank you so much for having me here, and it's a delight to be part of this group.
Thank you. Can you tell us more about your innovation? Like, how do you approach creating wealth?
This is great. So as you mentioned, I grew up in a socialist country to socialist parents, so we never talked about money, and I didn't know what assets and liabilities were until I was 35, started an MBA at Babson in Boston. By then I was a very successful researcher, and I was a lead of product development for a corporation. But I just felt that there were so many things lagging behind in my mind because I was just not used to having those conversations. And that set me in a different path, because a lot of people believe that they confuse being rich with being wealthy. They don't understand that wealth is a flow. And if you try to block it and accumulate it, you're not serving yourself and you're not serving others. And one of the problems that I saw in my life around the world is that people have two main challenges: feeling safe and wealthy and powerful and worthy, and being happy. And I said, well, these are the two things that are always in conflict with each other. So can we find another method? And that's what I decided to work on, and created a method where we can create wealth. And when we create new wealth, there's no way to do it just for ourselves. We start sharing it. And I'm just in love with now angel investing, and I created a hybrid formula that allows people to make decisions, to feel inspired about investing in other people. And as Sir Cohen said, every investment is a spiritual and emotional enterprise, and it's a process that really should make people be fulfilled. So that's what I'm working on, is how do we bring those things. If I may, I'd like to explain a little bit more about some of the challenges that I've seen and the bridges that I see to overcome those challenges.
Sure, go ahead.
So along this line, one of the things that I discovered teaching was that people start getting confused about their own participation in creating wealth, because they tend to be confined into exploiting what they have. And our academic system channels people to exploit their natural talents for which they didn't do anything. And that leaves people completely disempowered. If instead we would teach people to use this gift that we have, that is life, to create something new based on what we're passionate about, not what we're good at, we would have happier people that would be better contributors to society. And that translates into wealth, in the sense that we tend to try to accumulate and block the wealth, and what is mine. And we don't realize that by opening the flow, we're better individuals, but we also become wealthier. So wealth in itself is a flow, and you can be wealthy and be extremely happy and inspired and love what you do, which is what I do and what my club does.
Today, what would the world look like in 2045?
I want to work towards that. I don't want to, I'm an action-driven person. So in 2045, I want the world to be more of a plain level field for a lot of people. We have a wealth gap that I want to work towards eliminating or reducing. And I like to take action, like you've seen me. It's not just thinking about it, but what are the steps that we take? We had the conflicting model of capitalism, which is about numbers and production and productivity, and then we have socialism, which is about values and humanity. None of those systems work anymore. So I think we're going towards a society that is more prosperous because it's also more humane. So when I see a fellow human being that is suffering and I don't have compassion, or I don't feel that I can do anything about it, there's a part of me that is dying. And when I can bring that into my capacity to create wealth and keep some of that for myself, then I blend those two worlds of being financially secure, having my financial capital needs taken care of, but also have my human needs taken care of.
So how do you see what you're doing shaping that world of prosperity in 2045?
That is a great question. So I'm an angel investor, and I've been doing that for 30 years. And a lot of people invested in me, not only their capital, not only the financial capital. So there's the money that you give people, but it's also your time, your talent, your connections, your support, your emotional support. So there's a lot of, there's 5 or 6 capitals. What I do now is I allow individuals the opportunity to invest along VC funds in Silicon Valley in large deals. So we invested in a company that was raising $277 million. And then the people that were part of my group, they were able to invest as little as $2,000 if they wanted. So what happens is that we see high quality deals. They see there's a possibility to have access to that. And then they turn around in their communities and they become better coaches and better supporters of their local environment, because they see it's not the theory, it's the practice. They see how people are approaching this creation of new wealth, which is what venture capital does. And by bringing those two worlds together, I want to be able to have an impact in local communities. And those people are going to make an extraordinary amount of money, because that's what you do in venture capital. They're going to make the decisions based on what they're passionate about, going back to that system that I tell you now what they're good at, but what they're passionate about, what is their interest. And if they don't want to invest, they don't have to invest, but they feel good about the process of the decision-making process. And then they go and they have some of that cash will be available for them to invest locally. And I'm just building those bridges that otherwise are disconnected.
When I think about some of the venture capitalists I know, what they're passionate about is just making money. And I think from what I know about you that you have some other criteria, that it's not just about how much money am I going to make. And you mentioned things that you're passionate about. What kinds of businesses are you particularly supporting?
Well, when we take the helicopter view, we see transformative industries. So for example, our last investment, and it was the first investment overseas, is a neobank for mainstream women in India. And the neobank is located in Singapore for financial reasons. And so I don't see there has to be a compromise between making money and making meaning. And I did run a VC fund, and I was very successful because I applied. That's when I started thinking about the wealthy method. How does this add wealth to society at large? How do we create new jobs? How do we create new value? What is the impact? And then I have a PhD on the wealth created from academic research. And I broke it down into what are the layers that people need to look at. So there are few venture capital funds that are they deserve the name vulture capital, but that is not the majority. The majority of people have good intentions, have good meanings. Unfortunately, our business schools teaches us about competition, not about collaboration. it teaches us about managing resources and extracting every single penny from every single dollar, because that's what we can measure. We are yet to find a way to measure how many opportunities we lost. And we had a conflict because the corporations were all about managing resources and managing the wealth that we had, not creating new wealth, creating innovation for the benefit of the shareholders. And then we have the entrepreneurial paradigms, which was about creating just opportunities and taking risk. But there is not an overarching theory that brings the best of both worlds, because there's a conflict between being creative and being productive. And that is what we're trying to create with a wealthy method, but it can be applied to anybody. It's how do you progress and how do you balance that productivity with creativity? And it is all based in the individual's passion about using their time to create something they're proud and they're passionate about.
You talked about business schools. It made me wonder, you said that you went to get your MBA at 35 and that you didn't even know what a balance sheet was. Well, I'm really curious, why get an MBA? That
is a great
what you've
question.
done with it, I'm happy that you did, but it didn't seem like a normal path.
I had a hard time. I slept on the floor with my kids, and we were rice and broccoli for a few months. So here I was a very young researcher. I presented my first research paper when I was 15. And I thought I was very smart. And, I was smart, but I just didn't do anything to deserve it. I could have been blind. And then that kicked with me later in life. There's some people who have different abilities. I just happened to be academically, it was very easy for me. And I went to work at Bayer because I was a scientist. And my boss convinced me over 6 months to go and work at Bayer as the head of product development. And he said, if you want to change the industry, you come inside and you change it from the inside. You don't know what's going on in agrochemicals, and you're just being very theoretical at the university. And then he said, and we're going to pay you 7 times your salary. And I laughed and I said, you guys think you can buy everybody? And he said, no, we don't think we can buy everybody. We just think that you're too naive. And I said, well, I'm a scientist. I can't just leave the lab because that's my life. I go to the lab and I love and I talk to the cells, and the cells talk to me, and I am very passionate about that. And he said, we know that, because one of my students worked at that company. That's how they convinced me to go there. But it took a lot of months. And he said, you can go and work at the university 1 day a week, and the university doesn't have to pay you. So you're saving the university money. And I remember I drove back to my father because I've always been very close to him. And I said, I don't know what to do. And by then I was a single mom with 2 kids with, an 18-year-old car. And I was very happy with my life. I didn't need another job. And my dad said to me, don't sell your soul to the devil. Don't do it. And I thought about it. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to give it a try. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to the university. And I learned so much. I mean, my boss was amazing. The level of professionalism at Bayer was amazing. I grew the team to 14 people. We had research agreements with all the universities in Venezuela. We shared so much information with everybody. We created the safe use of pesticides. We did a program to reduce the use of pesticides to make it more efficient for farmers. So we were more profitable because we were selling less at a better margin, and the farmers were spending less money. And that's how I started thinking, we need to think differently about how we create wealth. And then I realized that the problem that I was trying to solve, that was the problem of access to healthy food, was not going to be solved by having healthier food. It was going to be solved by allowing small companies and researchers at universities to have enough money to do whatever they wanted to do. And money doesn't make people happy, but worrying about money distracts them from doing things that make them happy. It's the worry about money that kills people. It's not the money itself. But money gives you choices. And the only reason that I can do what I do is that I have enough resources to fund somebody else that has some ideas that they're passionate about. So I always look at, in the overall picture, how is this creating new wealth for everybody? New jobs, new taxes, new offices, new spaces, innovation. And that this company in Singapore is amazing. I invested in a company that is printing organs, and that is amazing. I invested in a company called Madison Reed, and they're doing teens for women. Of course, I don't do that. But the whole purpose of Madison Reed was to change the life of hair colorists, because they fall into the what I call the entrepreneurial trap. They spend around $28,000 on getting a certificate that is not recognized to do anything else. It's not a third tier degree. And then they believe that they have the power to defend, to create their own wealth, but they become a slave of that. And then they have to spend all discussing all the other things, and then they ruin their health with bad hair coloring. And the large companies, they don't care about them. And this woman who was came from the financial service developed a formula to give them back a sense of progress and dignity, and have them participate in the wealth that they were creating by making people beauty without destroying their wealth, their health and their fingers. And I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful business model. I never thought I would invest in that. And I was just in love with that. So there's just a lot of those things that we invest in that we're very, very excited.
You've kind of walked around this. I hear that your idea of wealth is not necessarily what most people think of as wealth, and I wonder if you've defined it differently. If it sounds like it's coming from a new paradigm. So you kind of, when you say wealth, then you say a lot of other things. Do you have like sort of an idea that with your own list or of what wealth is, your own definition?
Yeah, and I actually, not only that, I have a trademark. I call it wealthing, the wealthing principles. And the wealthing is a process of creating wealth for the benefit of society. So it's not for the benefit of one person, but for the benefit of society. So we go in layers, and we have two axes. And one axis is creativity, and the other axis is productivity. And one axis is passion, and the other one is talent. So we keep balancing those things, because what happens is when a lot of people tell you you're good at something when you're a kid, that you're very, you're heavily influenced by other people's thoughts. You forget about what you love doing. So that's why adults usually don't paint, because we lost that sense of recognition. You're good at this, and then people start telling you you're so good at this, you're so good at this, you're too good at this, that you lose your internal locus of control, and it starts moving away from you to the voices of the teachers, to the voices of the director of the school, to the voices of the parents, of the career counselors that tell you you should study. Like they told me always I should study medicine, but I can't see blood. So I went into biotech because the plants don't have blood. They have sap and it's not red. But I fell into that trap. And then what happens is that people become very unhappy with their lives because they're trying to exploit a talent instead of using the gift of life to create something new, to create new talent. So that is a paradigm shift. And then we need to balance productivity with creativity, because if we are overly creative, we become very inefficient and we destroy wealth. So those are the four areas that we work on. But wealthing is the process of creating wealth for the benefit of everybody.
So I know about impact investing, and I know like organizations like BlackRock are now starting to measure that. How in your industry do you see a shift in paradigm happening?
Well, a lot of people do impact investing not from their heart, but because it's a good branding exercise. I don't think I don't let that come to us, because also as a woman, I get bombarded with bad business models that they say are impact investing, and I don't want to have that pressure. But also there's another reason for that, is that people assume that because I'm a woman and because I'm Latina, I'm going to give them money without expecting that money to create wealth and without expecting me to get a reward, or the people that invest with me to get a reward. And I don't like that, because I did not come from a wealthy upbringing. I have a foundation with food and clothing to Venezuela. These people can't really do anything about it, but I like to separate the impact investing from the heart for impact investing in the pocket, just because it's a good branding exercise. Not all the things that I do could be defined as impact investing. So yeah, I just have a mixed reaction with that.
See what you're doing as influencing the industry at all, or do you want to do that? Do you want to bring these principles to other investors?
You know, I want to bring it to the masses more than to investors. You know, everybody can invest. Everybody has time, has talent, has connections. There are many types of capital. So not necessarily to other investors. I want the mainstreams to be able to feel that they can invest, that they can choose, and they can vote with their dollars, not just buying something, but also helping with capital. I mean, there's a ton of people talking about mentoring minorities and underrepresented founders. But honestly, some of them don't have a clue. I've lost counts of the people that come with a bad business model or a bad deck, and I run them through them. And I said, you're not making money. You are destroying the wealth from somebody else, or you're not going to be able to pay good salaries. So you're subsidizing these people who work here are going to be suffering. So not everybody can volunteer, for example. And then we continue to create, to increase the wealth gap, because not everybody can volunteer, and there's no incentive for some nonprofits to help people really overcome their challenges, because if they lose their clientele, they can't exist anymore. So that's why I like the overarching principles about how do we create wealth for everybody, not just this subgroup. So there's a lot of well-intended advice that is horrible because people don't have a clue. And so we need to be a little bit careful about that. I want people to feel comfortable investing. I want people to feel proud to say, I am an investor. There's a negative connotation that you're vulture capital, you're mean if you invest. There's a negative connotation if you reject a founder. I've been rejected a lot. I lost money on my businesses. I started 18 companies and 5 nonprofits. So I've been very active. And some of my businesses were bad business models. So I learned a lot, but we need to be very professional about that. And more than bringing investors into this approach, I think I want the mainstream to be participant and to expect a reward. Because when you invest in the stock market, you're not really supporting actively that company. When you invest in an entrepreneur, you can influence the outcome.
So are there other domains that at Society 2045, we're looking at a lot of different things about the future of work and law and all of that. Are there other domains that you think are sort of helping what you're doing, or pushing up against what you're doing?
Thank you for that question. I think, well, what really drove me into this was a conversation I had with Matt about, leaderless organizations. I always, in the business school, everybody assumes because you're a woman that you're into leadership. I know nothing about leadership. I don't see myself as a leader. I've always run flat organizations, even when I work at Bayer. I don't know if it's polite to say that, but I always gave my boss the finger when I didn't want something. And he used to be horrified. It's like, oh, I can't believe that. But I work with guys. And I said, oh, come on, everybody knows this. No, I'm not taking any of that. So I was very stubborn, and that was the reason why I was able to do a lot of things. And I think we need to have a better system of managing people, because we are killing people, and that's something that Jose and Matt talk about, and that's really powerful. And then I met Kimberly, and she unleashes the energy that people have inside in a way that is amazing. So that energy is really killing people because it doesn't have any way to go. And then I heard about your job with law, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so powerful, because we have such bad contracts. We have to remember that I come from a country where contracts mean nothing. So I never really thought about it until I moved here, and I said, oh, or I lived in Australia. I'm Australian too. And in Australia, your word is a contract. Here, it's not. So I'm just enamored in discovering these other areas that I never thought about. And it's just creating a beautiful puzzle that is taking shapes in different ways.
Would you call yourself an optimist?
I'm an incurable optimist. I don't look at the glass half empty or half full. I just look at the glass. Wow, we have a glass. and I live in the slums. So I've seen extreme poverty. My daughter had 4 foster kids. Some of them were living on the streets here in this country. I've seen how fortunate I am. So I'm extremely grateful. I was in coma when I was 13, so that also helps. But other than that, I'm optimist because I'm alive. I mean, look at us. I mean, we're breathing all day. And my area was biotechnology. So I could imagine all the reactions inside and all the energy and, biomagnetism. My dad was working biomagnetism. And how could we not be optimistic? I just, yeah. And I like singing too, so.
Thank you, Alicia. I'm going to turn it over to questions from others now. Anybody have a question for Alicia?
Yeah, I have a question, Alicia. What are the biggest barriers, self-imposed barriers to people becoming investors?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. That is a great question. I don't know because I haven't researched that, but intuitively, we hate investors. We have a bad reputation. All the investors, first of all, we tend to think, how many investors do you know? And people just assign bad energy to investors because people feel that when you're an investor, you take away the power, you're not collaborating. So they talk about radical. And that is great. So my parents had an issue with that. My dad couldn't understand what was my relationship with the founders. And I have one that I love dearly that was doing video games to change social norms for Black people. And it's something that I couldn't understand. And now I know more because of him. And my dad was like, okay, your guy is here. And it's like, well, he's not my guy. He's a partner. And my dad is like, yeah, but you pay him. Well, I don't pay him. I fund the company. But he's like, he works for you. No, he doesn't work for me. He works for himself. But he comes from the socialist part. Well, now, if you come from the capitalist part, it's like, if you have the money, you're mean. And we need to change that. So I intuitively, I think the biggest barrier is that we tend to think that investors are mean. But the other one is that we don't know how to say no as an investor, and we don't know how to take no as an investor. So a lot of people assume that because I'm an investor, I have money to throw away. I mean, look my 15-year-old shirt. And I do wear shirts that I value. So it's very authentic about how do I conduct myself. But a lot of people think that is bad. And the reason is that there are very few people that abuse that. And that's what gets on the news. And so when I started saying there's a lot of VC funds that are amazing, those don't get on the news.
I look at, I'm personally sitting in the middle of this. I think many of us are in the middle of this VC world here in the Valley. And so my question to you is, do you see the work that you're doing as influencing and helping to change both the perception of the VC space, but also the VC space and how it sees itself and how it works?
My intention is to prove that you can do it in a different way and be profitable and be proud of it and not feel bad about saying no. That's why what I have is an investment club. We don't have a fund. Because if you are a person, you invest in a fund, the person that runs the fund makes all the decisions. There's no way you connect with the founders. There's no way you feel useful. You might as well invest in the stock market or go and run machines. But you feel good about it because you are investing in a VC fund, and it goes into this extraction mode that I want to be rich, which is not what I do. But if you're an angel investor, the problem that you have as an angel investor is that in order to be a good angel investor, you need to have been burned. And I learned that the hard way because I have been burned. And now after 30 years, I can pick up a business model. I can say, okay, you need to change these 3 things. Now, if the founders don't want to change it, that's fine. It's their baby, it's not my baby. But if I see somebody with a baby drowning, it is my responsibility to go in and say, hey, you need to take care of this, even if I don't invest. But the founders need to be able to accept that. And I remember I've been on both sides. Now, what happens with angel investors is that they haven't been burned, because by the time they become angel investors, they've usually have worked a lot to accumulate that money that they can invest. Some have been entrepreneurs. I've had a very eclectic life. I lived in many countries, so I'm not very stable, as you can see. But that has given me a lot of opportunities to learn. And if you don't have that, and you're investing in a company where the founder is not a serial founder that has been burned before, then you have somebody that needs professional help with somebody that is investing that doesn't have the capacity to be the smart money. It's just the dumb money. So that's a recipe for disaster. And I think what I'm doing is bringing people at later stages where there's a good market product fit, and then discussing those deals. So 2 of our members are becoming founders, and they have completely transformed their ideas. And they say, we're going to start these companies, and they have a much better grasp about what works and what doesn't work because they've been with us for 6 months. And I'm sure the conversations they have in their local areas is completely different because of that. So you have those 2 things. If you invest as an LP in a VC fund, you don't learn. If you invest as an angel investor and you invest solo and you haven't been burned before, you give dumb money. So you can't really help. So that is a conflict.
I find that really interesting, the difference between being an investor in a partnership versus being in a group. So how common is that, number one? And do you see that as something that's going to sort of, not just the wealthing part, but the group investing part, and having hands-on relationships between the investors and the startups?
And I always invested solo. And in some countries, we tried to create groups and we couldn't because the notion was that everybody had to agree. So that's really difficult. I mean, you know how it is difficult to agree. Now, can you imagine agreeing to invest in a company that is high risk? I mean, that's really difficult. And when I moved here, I had the fortune of being invited to Sand Hill Angels. Sand Hill Angels, I think, is the largest angel group in the nation. And I became very involved. I am involved, but now I run my own club as well. And I noticed that when I joined, we were around 80 or 70 or 80. We were 4 women. And we grew. Now we're around 150 members. But I had the opportunity to be the chair of membership committee, and I had the opportunity to be on the board. And I noticed how difficult it was for a common individual to come and participate because it's overwhelming. So you have these senior people who don't have the time to help the junior people to come in, and I'm talking about junior people, a person who's 65 and retired and wants to be an angel investor. So the best way to do that is to really join a club or a group, because if you put $100,000 a year in one company, you're not going to make an impact. It's not enough for the company, but it's a big chunk of your money. If you form part of the group, you can put, well, at least most of the angel groups in Silicon Valley expect you to invest between 20 and 50,000 per year. And the minimum is 5 or 10,000 per company. So I know those numbers very well. Most people don't. And I know the industry in and out. So, because I'm an LP in VC funds, I'm in big funds, in micro VCs, later stage. I'm a very active seed stage in pre-seed at Sand Hill Angels, and I have my group that is post-seed. So I know the whole ecosystem. But if any person wants to be part of Sand Hill Angels, and by the way, accredited investor rules have changed as of August last year. It was just COVID, so people didn't know. So basically anybody who has graduated from a top tier university, talk about the wealth gap, or anybody that had, yeah, of course, or anybody who has worked in a business can be an accredited investor. But if you join one of those groups, you're going to have to work 20 to 60 hours every week just to learn how to maneuver that. Not everybody can do that. And then you have a lot of people that come in and they leave because it's too difficult. They can't make a decision. So I was frustrated both things. And I was frustrated because I couldn't explain to my friends, this is how you can do that. So what I did was I did a hybrid. So we see one deal a week, and we go and we analyze that, and we talk to the entrepreneur for an hour. If you come to Sand Hill Angels, it's like 50 entrepreneurs that get selected, 8 get selected, you get 10 minutes, you have a team. It's just really, really stressful. And at the end, people don't know how to make those decisions. They just go with the fear of missing out. Well, so many members are putting in, and these are the members that are more vocal, so I'm going to go and put in. But they don't know how to help that. So we're more intentional in that. And I do hope that more people start doing that, because there's a lot of people investing in emerging VCs or small VCs. And there's some great ones. Arlan was there. There's a lot of crowdfunding as well. My concern is that these companies need to have the professional support, because as I mentioned, you can have a lot of good intentions, and you don't know how you're doing. Like, I couldn't do, somebody came with a collaborative contract, I wouldn't know what to do with it. I need to go and ask Kim, but that's because I know her. But if I didn't, I wouldn't know where to go. So I would assume I know what I'm doing, and that is a problem. Did I answer your question?
Yes, and then you gave me 10 more, but I'll leave it at that.
Actually, I would love to ask you a question about more how you help the companies that you work with. And I cannot get a single investor interested in requiring their invested companies to do basic common sense. And they tell me, oh, Kimberly, we invest in people that we trust, and then we trust them.
This is a very, very interesting observation. The people that need to make those decisions are not the investors, are the founders. The founders need to make those decisions, and the founder needs to go to the investors. Actually, the founders don't need the permission from the investors, because the amount of money that they spend on that is not that relevant. So the founder needs to put that into their business plan. Funding is not an event, it's a process. So at different parts of the process, you need different types of people. And the companies that succeed are the companies that are able to go through that. But
I have a question. Because we've been talking about the present and the things as they are, right? So let's say in 30 years from now, what would the world look like? Would that have changed at all, or still giving capital to people to go and try things out, and maybe they're more exciting and all that? But what would it look like in 30 years from now?
I don't know, but I hope I can see it. I hope we have a better mechanism to manage the flow of capital. I also hope that we're going to be smarter about taxes. And I do hope that we're going to have more economists talking about wealth gap. Currently, if you're renting, they can increase the rent whenever they want. So we had to freeze the rent increase in in the East Bay, 25%.
No.
25% is a lot of money. And then these people are not getting paid enough to pay the rent. They can never afford to get a house. If you buy your house, you can discount the interest on the house. You can discount the taxes on the house. And like I have a mortgage on my house, and I know it's not going to go up. And if it's going to go up, I know how it's going to go up. If you're a renter, you don't know when the rent is going to go up, and you don't know if you're going to be able to afford it. You cannot use your home to generate money. If you have your own home, chances are that you can rent a room. If you're renting, you can't. So we keep oppressing people. I heard, I don't know if that's true, I heard that 75% of real estate that is being bought currently is being bought by corporations.
Yes.
And real estate and educations are the biggest consumers of wealth and the biggest generators of wealth. So I would like to do something about that. And going back to Andy, I am morally outraged at that.
So what would that look like if it were fixed? If it worked better for people?
I think we're going to have more collaborative ownership, which we haven't done. We haven't explored that. That came with your Kim, jump in. I think we're going to allow people to invest in property in different ways through cryptocurrencies or something like that. The other thing that happens is that being poor is very expensive. So I wrote a book called The 10 Unwealthy Habits, and that was one of the paradigms. So poor people are extremely good at managing cash flow because money is very expensive for them. And we can't put pressure on them to get out of poverty because they can't, not because they don't want to. They do a much better job than we do. So if my daughter wants to buy a house, her interest rate is 8%. If I want to buy a house, it's 2%. What are we doing today? So I think we're in for a big shakeup of the financial system, where we're not going to have banks. Currency is an illusion. It is not backed up by anything but we see a dollar bill. Actually, we don't see a dollar bill anymore. I don't even have a card. I use my phone. So I think it's a big shakeup coming up. And I do hope that part of the efficiencies are going to be transferred to others. I do think we have a moral obligation to bring more people into a world that is more fair. And I am working toward that, not just talking about it.
But what can you do, or what do you think we could do about beyond the moral requirement? How can we create mechanisms, or can you imagine the mechanisms to get there, other than let's trust good people?
No, there has to be some mechanism in place. I think we need to create those mechanisms, but the first step on creating a mechanism is to have a goal. I'm optimistic because I have a goal. And if the goal changes, then I can still take action. So I think the economists have to be involved. I think the lawmakers have to be involved. And I have this intuitive feeling that the change is going to come from investors and philanthropists. That is how I created Chile's first seed capital fund. And the reason I was able to do that was that I talked to over 1,000 people, and 13 believed that we could create something new, and we did. That's exactly what I did with the club. And I might change it again because I'm innovating all the time. I don't know all the answers. I don't even know all the questions, but I do know that I don't want to live in a world where my cleaner can have access to a house. And it's not because I'm socialist, it's because I'm smart.
Thank you.
Might be a good place to end.
Actually, I love that when I said that.
I don't know that you can top that. So thank you very much, Alicia, for coming and having our conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.